do I feel? Okay, I feel neutral. I tap on neutral, and the application says, you're happy, very, very happy. I'm like, okay, but I'm not so happy. Then I check again. I'm like, let me touch the third button, which is red. Touching the button says, you are neutral. Yeah. So all in all, I had to go back to Play Store to check what actually this application was all about. And, because we don't usually want to read descriptions and README, we just download things. On the README, they had added that this application is built for fun. So we don't utilize sensors or anything. It's just for fun. And I was like, okay, now I'm so disappointed. So what I mean to say is that there are quite a number of apps that you'll find online, but make sure that at least you read. Thank you, doctor. You told us, yes, it's true, oxygenated blood is bright red and deoxygenated blood is more dark. So, guys, you can still explore that, maybe build some model to guide. Okay? Again, remember, our work is not to build diagnostic tools. Never use that word that you're building an app to diagnose. That can never happen. You're building an app or a solution to support. That's the language, to support diagnosis. We haven't reached that complete diagnosis or autonomous, but we support. So feel free to try and use the phone camera, expose the skin, and then try to see whether you can read some interesting values there. It's again an area still that is more into computer vision. You're taking an image and trying to analyze the different values. Yes, so again, that was just basically about iOS and Android, but all of them can be used to build the different solutions that you're interested in. Then there is another question here. I don't know if I can play this video. Let's see. Again, this is to give you broad knowledge. And in each component that we are talking about, try your best to think in terms of research. Don't think so much in terms of development or when he talks about computer vision, I don't know. I think what matters is, can you identify a problem to work on? And more so, I request the president, if possible, please remind me in one of probably our lecture tomorrow. I'll try to talk about vector embeddings. There is an active area of research that is going on internationally or world over. The area is about vector embeddings. So if someone knows some mathematics, some not too much, you could join that area. So please remind me tomorrow to share about vector embeddings. There is a big research area there that I don't even know why people look for topics. There are so many topics. I'm already giving you some topics. So just decide and focus on one. Don't wait anyway. So let me play this video. So don't mind about
In the last quarter of 2016, Android and iOS had a combined market share of 99.
Can you guys hear?
Yes, I can hear.
Oh, okay, wonderful.
0.6%. In the last quarter of 2016, Android and iOS had a combined market share of 99.6%. This means that we have a near complete duopoly and that all...
And the topic, the idea is, why don't we have new mobile operating systems? We have iOS and Android, basically. The one for Microsoft died a natural death. There was one for BlackBerry, it also died out. Huawei or Huawei has been trying, but that is because because of the fights between China and the US. So the question is, why don't we have new ones? Someone can even ask, what are we people in the IT industry doing? Why don't we build our own mobile operating system in Uganda? Let's forget about resources just and the fact that we are poor. No, we are not that poor anyway. But just listen to some of the reasons here why.
Attempts at breaking their dominance have failed pretty miserably. And yet, I don't think we're stuck with these two options forever. I'm Martin from Tech Altar, and let me explain why in the 15th episode of the Story Behind series. Mobile operating systems are actually a perfect example of a so-called winner-takes-it-all market, which means that all forces are working to keep the current companies in power and the new ones away from it. The more users there are on a platform, the more developers will support it, and the more support there is, the more users will come. These will bring more hardware manufacturers to the OS and more money to the OS developer who can invest it into further improving the platform. It's a perfect snowball which keeps the big ones rolling and the small ones dying. This means that for any company to have a chance, they have to reach a critical mass or a minimum amount of users, which as a new entrant is close to impossible. It's especially hard because of the cost and complexity of creating and selling an advanced operating system. Just to give you an idea, a decent smartphone app consists of somewhere around 50 to 100,000 lines of code, whereas a complex OS like Windows 10 has around 50 million lines. For anyone to take a shot at this market, they would have to hire thousands and thousands of developers and then either create attractive hardware themselves or get partners on board, and then sweet talk tens of thousands of external developers to join the platform, and finally spend mountains of money on advertisement. All of this requires so much money that only a handful of companies in the world even have a chance at taking a shot at it. And even if they do, the big two have great systems in place to block anyone's progress right from the start. Apple has built the walls around their ecosystem and brand so high that people are quite reluctant to leave it, and Google's online services have become so irreplaceable for many people that Google can make a new OS unfeasible for most consumers by simply denying quality access to their services on it, just like they did in the case of Windows Phone, for example. So how could this possibly change? Well, I'd argue that Android and iOS are so strong that they can't be beaten at their own game. And so the only road to victory is for someone to take a fundamentally different approach. Think of desktop PCs. Windows, back in the days, was so dominant that just like iOS and Android, nobody could challenge it. But companies like BlackBerry, Apple, and Google had no trouble fighting Microsoft on smartphones, because Microsoft was just as new to smartphones as all the others, so the fight was much more even. In the same way, the only halfway successful new competitor to Windows PCs lately is Chrome OS, which completely rethinks the way computers work by relying on web services instead of local ones. The undefeatable behemoth that was Windows was successfully challenged in both cases by companies that didn't try to compete with it directly, but instead found a way around it. In the same way, I would expect that new players could only successfully challenge Android and iOS if they do the same. Yet another 5-inch touchscreen with an app store and 2 cameras in your pocket just won't do. An operating system is just a piece of software between your hardware and your programs. This means that as soon as you radically change either the hardware, like smartphones did against laptops, or the programs, like Chrome OS did against Windows, you might find enough room for a new OS. So let's start by looking at the 4 most important hardware trends lately. For a couple of years now, wearables have been set to become the new device category. The idea is that somehow you will have your main mobile computing device attached to your body, be it through a watch, a pair of glasses, or who knows what else. The hype around wearables has died down considerably lately because I think the technology for this to go mainstream is still many, many years away. But it's hard for me to imagine how it wouldn't eventually become a thing. You can already put many of the same components that you would find in a smartphone into something like a smartwatch or smart glasses, so I think it's only a matter of time before someone comes up with a good interface that will enable proper interaction with them. Modular hardware is another thing that I see popping up quite consistently in the minds of tech companies. The idea that you can somehow change or augment capabilities of your hardware by swapping out modules, or even by connecting external devices, like an external GPU into your thin and light laptop, is attractive to say the least. Now, we haven't seen anyone who has really figured out modularity just yet, but I think it has potential. The trend that has me the least excited is that of having hardware that is dedicated to voice assistants like Google Home or Amazon Echo. The idea here would be that voice controls could replace some of your interaction with menus and touchscreens, and while I think this could work in some scenarios, like say in a car or while cooking, I have my doubts about it for anything more complex than that. I generally think that voice is an extremely limited way of interaction. It is slow, inaccurate, inherently terrible at anything multilingual or international, cumbersome, outdoors, and the list just goes on. Voice assistants do have a market, but I don't see them replacing visual systems on a large scale anytime soon.
My name is Munzir Dale. I'm a professor of electrical engineering and computer science at MIT. The partnership that we have with professional education has allowed us to create a new course that
My favorite trend, on the other hand, would be what I call convergence, the idea that one device could have many different form factors. Asus was one of the early pioneers of this with their PhonePad, which was a phone that could transform into a tablet. And on the PC side, companies like Asus, Lenovo, and Microsoft have done some pretty interesting work with two-in-ones. The Ubuntu phone and Windows 10 mobile devices were both built around the idea of a phone that could transform into a PC when needed. And if you watch any iPad Pro commercials from Apple, they too try to convince you that their tablet can be a PC if you really want it to be. Now, I think we're still far away from the perfect transformer, but I can't help but think that eventually we'll have one central device as our main computer, which will simply figure out what we want to do and adapt to it. So, if either one of these hardware trends go mainstream, that would certainly upset the OS market. On the other side of the OS are apps, which are currently our default method of using different services. But maybe they won't be forever, and if someone can change the nature of these services, maybe the OS will change with it too. The core problem with apps, or programs in general, is that making them is too expensive and too complex, especially when a developer has to create a whole new product for Android, for iOS, for the web, and possibly for Windows and macOS too, and let alone for smaller platforms like Windows Mobile. That is far from ideal, and in response to this problem, I can see two big trends. First, the idea that the same app could run on multiple platforms and multiple device types. Microsoft's Universal Windows Platform apps are probably the best example of this, as they can run on Windows 10 mobile, desktop and tablet PCs, HoloLens and other virtual reality headsets, Xbox, and even some IoT and server devices. Developers can simply teach their application to recognize what device they're running on and adjust their interface auto. Same thing on a smaller scale with universal iOS apps as well. Those can run on iPhones and iPads with the same core but with different interfaces. And Google has now allowed Android apps to run not only on phones and tablets, but also on Chromebooks, which means that the same app can not only run on multiple device types, but also on multiple operating systems, which is quite impressive. But a little more ambitious than just letting the same app scale across different devices is the idea to completely replace apps with another solution entirely. And yes, I have made a whole video about this, which you can see right here. The most obvious trend would be the web. Chrome OS on desktops has shown that for some people, websites can replace many local programs. And while Firefox OS, which tried to do something similar on smartphones, has failed, the dream of websites replacing apps on phones hasn't disappeared. Most notably, Google has lately been pushing for a technology called progressive web apps, which would allow websites to act as apps, including having their own icon on your home screen, accessing some of your hardware features like Bluetooth, and keeping parts of their pages downloaded on your phone for better performance and decreased data consumption. And as someone who works for a company that develops their own app, I can tell you that this sounds mighty interesting to a lot of app developers. It means companies could eventually just create one responsive website and have it run on nearly all platforms. Taking things even further would be aggregators like virtual assistants, chatbots, and super applications. The idea here is that instead of each service having its own app or website, you could use one program to access many different services. And this too is already happening on a small scale. I can book flight tickets using the Skyscanner bot on Skype, or track my packages with the UPS Skype bot, for example. I can use Alexa to call cabs on Uber, buy new garbage bags on Amazon, find a new restaurant, access my calendar events, control my smart home devices, and so on. What is neat about these aggregators is that they can move between platforms and devices quite easily. They're only a single service, meaning that developers who support them can suddenly be present on a variety of places. So this is how I think iOS and Android can be challenged in the future, not by beating them at their own game, but rather by changing the rules of the game. And it's impossible to say who will succeed in that, but it's clear to see that Microsoft is trying their luck with both universal apps and with new form factors. And Google, for example, is also not afraid of challenging their own business models with things like progressive web apps. So far, it seems like Apple might be disrupted by this change the most because they're so reliant on their iPhone and on their App Store, and they don't seem to have any backup plan. I also think we shouldn't forget about external players, companies like Facebook and Amazon, who don't really have their own operating system just yet, but they have the potential, the resources, and maybe even the know-how to create.
Okay. I don't know if you guys have picked something from that. What do you think? Do you think Uganda can build its own mobile operating system? Hmm. 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 Okay. And I do agree. I think, yes, it's possible, but it's very complex. The idea is you need users. So even if we were to build our own, we need first of all have like an application or a solution that attracts a lot of users locally and worldwide. Then once you have that, then you can be able to leverage on those users to start building your own operating system. But first, you might need to build your own language. Okay, we might need to build our own language. And then we have to make it clear that it's not a direct replacement. We are not trying to compete with the big guns, but we want to build our own unique sort of solution specific to our society. And then from there, then we can have a developer community. But one of the challenges we have especially in our developing countries, is the perception of our people and also the attitude towards local developed products or solutions. I work with, I have a company, and we have been building software, I think, for the last 10 years. And so, of course, we have implemented a lot in hospitals, in schools, even in municipal councils, to do with revenue collection, different sectors. But one of the things you realize, even circles actually, one of the things we have realized is you take a product, and first of all, when they see the features, they will first of all doubt whether it was built locally. But of course, what gives us some edge is now when you go and say, okay, yes, we built this product, and we have tried it, tested it for so many years. It has worked for ABCD, and this is its progress. These are some of the statistics in its performance. It's managing over 1 million users. Okay, they start to trust you a bit. It's not until they have used it, and then as they use it, they are doubting her. Well, isn't it about to crash? Or are they about to steal our content? And then only when they start saying, okay, there is some doctor, okay, maybe there we can trust. So this is just about mentality. It's not that we don't have the skills to do some of these things, but our people won't trust. Until we say, of course, this is not something we do, but until you say, oh, we have some Indian and some guy from the US, and they are on our team, and the product is built from out there, they maintain it for us, we market. They are willing to pay billions. Anyway, it's just a perception. But I hope, but this video was just trying to show those challenges, but from that developed point of view, developed country point of view, why even in the US we don't have new operating systems taking over the what? Taking over the market. But you mentioned something also that is very interesting. Most of these tech companies, they have their own programming languages. So if you see platforms or you see companies like Facebook, they have their own programming languages they are using. Okay, so no wonder you see a lot of languages cropping up. So some of these languages are inspired by those large companies. Why do they build these languages? Customizing. They want to own their products and built in their own languages. So for you, if you wake up tomorrow and you look at Facebook and you want to build something like Facebook, if Facebook is using Java that everyone knows, then that means anyone can build a product like Facebook. If you wake up tomorrow and you see Android, and Android is built, the operating system is built only in Java, other people can also wake up and build an operating system like what? Like Android. So what they do is now they start introducing other languages. So you see that Android has Kotlin. So we are using Java, like I said, then they introduced Kotlin. So they own the language, they maintain it, and then they must own the product. So tomorrow, if you want to build an operating system, you need first to write a language. When you look at iOS, iOS has Swift. Swift is their programming language. They own it, they built it. They define the structure. So now, if you want to build one for Uganda, you guys can think. Yes, collaborative effort, Stella, like Stella is saying. But that doesn't mean we can't try. So that's what that video was basically about. Let's continue. So moving into mobile health, we are saying mobile devices supporting medical and public health, and they include, it's not just about phones, we have tablets and all iPads. I know some of you have them, just giving you a wider screen and wider options. I remember a few years back, we were trying to build a data collection tool for surgical procedures. And because the procedures, we were just trying to track the surgical procedures, and we had to do some interviews, interviewing some basically medical doctors. And it was very hard to put such information on a smartphone because it was quite a lot. So we had to opt for tablets because of the wide screen. So sometimes the solution you want to build warrants you using a larger device than just a smartphone. We have wearable devices. I know some of you do have them. You have the smartwatches and so many other devices that we might talk about later. Now we also have virtual reality or augmented reality. These devices are also existing where Some of them are used in, I've seen a few used like in football. So what they are doing in football is if a player is injured, or let's say they they have a broken leg, so during the process of recovery, they use these virtual headphones, or call them virtual headphones, and then they activate virtual reality such that it appears as if they are playing the football, but in actual sense they aren't. So to help them activate their mind, as well as try to activate some of their nerves, let's say for their legs, to start moving them. So they are doing that. And also for people who have phobia, if you are afraid of heights, they are using virtual reality as well. They simulate everything, and then you can first see it before you actually experience it. And outside of healthcare, a lot is going on. People are having a lot of fun with virtual reality, exploring different places. If you're studying and let's say you are studying about space, you're doing space engineering, but you have no chance, you haven't gotten a chance to fly or go into space to see how equipment is, then you can utilize virtual reality to see and have that experience or exposure. So it's more used into the area of, people will refer to it as gaming, but I can refer to it as exposure, or experiencing the things that all areas that possibly you wouldn't have a chance to visit physically. I know this is also used a lot in medicine. I mean, not just medicine, but healthcare, whereby you can, if you're going to perform a surgery, you can define the parameters of the person you're going to perform a surgery on, body type this number of weight, heartbeat this, and all that. Then it is simulated, so the surgery is simulated. You perform a surgery through virtual reality. So that one is also there. So there are many beneficiaries, of course. You know, all of us are beneficiaries of mobile health. And why it is crucial? One, it's a real-time data provision, because it's a mobile device. Wherever you are, you can provide information. You can easily be monitored. Whether the doctor is there or not, the device can easily help provide real-time information. For those who have smartwatches, you know, you can easily monitor your sleep, you can monitor your blood pressure, you can monitor your sitting, your sitting habits. You can monitor your running or exercise patterns. So with all this is all in real time. Each time you're going to run, you set your smart device and say, hey, it's time to run, and then it will count for the kilometers, the blood pressure, the calories lost, and so on and so forth. And then at the end of the month or the week, you can monitor your performance. So in some countries, I know for them, the doctor can prescribe a medicine and also prescribe an application. So if you have, or your blood pressure is growing, the doctor can easily prescribe to you an application to help you exercise. And then whatever you do is also having an account where they are actually seeing how you're performing. And I think that has been very, very helpful. Then tracking own health, we've talked about that. Full access to disease databases, yes. If there is if one needs to have to check a specific disease and its general symptoms, then it's easier to do on a mobile application. Again, I've seen in some places whereby if you go to a doctor, they ask you questions as they enter your answers in a phone. That is basically a phone application. So at the end of it all, the phone is going to suggest quite a number of solutions or diseases, or try to guide on the diagnosis. So now it's up to the doctor to decide from their expertise that based on these symptoms, even though some symptoms are the same for specific diseases, or some symptoms can appear the same and yet it's a different disease, all those dynamics, the app can help suggest some of the solutions according to what has been input, and provide an explanation as to why the application or the solution on the phone thinks that that's the disease. So the other thing is about reminders. I think there is quite a lot of research that is also going on in MAST as well. There's a lot of research to do with reminding TB patients to take their medication. At least that's the one I know the most, but I know there are quite a lot of others. And of course, you're trying to check the adoption. Are people really taking their medication according to their regimen, and so on and so forth. Then also, diagnosis, we've talked a lot about diagnosis. But then, as we talk about all these apps, we talk about technology, we talk about how important they are, we talk about the challenges, we explore this whole area. There are issues to do with the regulations. And as a developing country, one of the challenges we face the most is sometimes we want to implement technologies where there is no regulation. And then when you implement, the regulation comes and then it affects you because you must make changes. But again, what we try to just do, at least I know in some countries, they first release a regulation, a policy, before actually the technology is implemented. So they do more of a prospective kind of approach than a retrospective. So we always learn from such countries as well. But for Uganda, at least we know we have those some of those policies. Uganda National E-Health Policy, the Mobile Healthy Policy. We also have from Ministry of ICT mobile apps usage. Of course, we have I saw recent, I think, but this is not entirely concerning us. I saw they are coming up with a cyber security law, sort of. But we also have that's technology, social media, and what have you. But then in data protection and analytics, I know we have the data protection policy. That one is there. Then of recent, we have a data science policy for the country. And then they are working on an AI policy. That one is still in the pipeline. And I mean, I was only wondering why you would have a data science policy independent and then you have an AI policy. As one of the stakeholders, I've asked this question. But of course, I didn't get proper explanation, but it doesn't make it's not properly justified as to why you would have data science policy and an artificial intelligence policy alone. So those policies are there. At least we know about the research and ethics approval, which you guys must get before you basically work on your research. That is, if your research will involve collecting data or will involve human beings, you will need REC approval, which usually takes some time as well. It can take you a month or two before you actually get it. So the best way, again, is to start early. And so many other regulations. You know, international, the GDPR policy or regulation, that one also affects us. Most times before you do research, they will ask you to, especially if you're not from the medical domain, they usually ask you to do some courses in relation to ethics or data management. There are platforms, again, as you do your research. I want to share this. Easy on it. There is no reason why someone would miss to have a research topic. There is no reason why you shouldn't. The issue is, even now as I share some of these platforms, you're not going to mind them. You're going to wait until they tell you it's time for research, because that's how we grew up. And then when they say it's time for research, that's when you remember. You're always going to say, I'm busy with work, I have this. So because of that, I have family, children. So now I can't think about research. Then when the time for research comes, you start moving up and down, crying how things are hard. Yet you were told early. So there's that platform called Physionet. Again, it's all about learning. What is learning without trying new things? So the platform usually provides free data sets in the medical domain. It's basically for medical. And if someone could just understand one data set and see how it is set up and see how the data was collected, for which country, and then from there you go online, try to see what people have published with that data set. Then from there you identify a research area to work on. It shouldn't be hard. And you can still twist this or fine-tune this to mobile. It's possible that you find someone already did something. They built a web system based on the data set, and they were trying out some sort of algorithm or approach. And then for you, you switch and see whether the same approach can be used, but for mobile. And that's your research. So I've shared the link. Please feel free to check it out or add it to your list. So I'm going to give you a break of 10 minutes. So let's convene again at 11:40, right? Is anyone still there? Okay, so let's break off for 10 minutes. So welcome back, guys. In the chat, I've put some research interests that you can explore, including mental health and large language models. That's one of the areas. I think I've focused more on the depression, and I know it affects a lot of people. So many people don't have, they have those challenges. They don't know that they have those challenges. And there are quite a number of tools that I used to kind of diagnose mental health issues. Tools already well proven medically, so you can always based on that to build AI related tools. Then they are there's building multilingual systems. That is to do with having a system that has many languages or uses many languages. There's computer vision, looking at images or photos, or they could be scans. They could be X-ray. There's a lot of research going on also in using X-ray images. For instance, one of the things we are trying to look at is to check and also report the imbalance in research, especially in computer vision and X-ray, because we realize that there's a lot of published work online, but it does not involve us, the people from such countries or developing countries. So there's a lot to explore in that line. And then there is mobile health or building AI-driven apps, and that's what we are trying to do. Natural language processing, for instance, if you look at, as long as you have records somewhere, you can use a lot of NLP techniques to explore topics. And apart from exploring topics, you can go ahead to look at relationships based on text. This is basically like using quantitative data, because text is basically qualitative data. But you can summarize these resources and create doctor's notes or even discharge notes based on patient's history. So all that can be done. Mental health, like I said, we are saying can build AI systems and digitizing those diagnostics tools. All this is research or using secondary data. If you know cargo or the Hugging Face or even the PhysioNet I just shared with you, all those we can extract data from there and come up with a topic. And of course, human-computer interaction is also there, among other topics. So these are core, and you can explore research areas in those areas. So again, don't sit and wait. So there are concerns now in mobile health. There are a lot of concerns. One, what type of data do you need to collect? You need to know, are they images? Is it text? Is it a combination? And once you think about the type of data, then you have to think about how you're going to process it, analyze it, and the like. Okay, which tools will you use to do the analysis? And of course, you always have a research question and you want to anticipate the outcomes. But research is always dynamic, especially in this generation. Sometimes we do collect both quantitative and qualitative research, but we can't use it because maybe our study design was poorly written. And then once we have the data, cleaning it and using the different techniques to standardize it to make sure that it is not biased, such that when we use it, our models or the analysis is as we expect, all at least acceptable in the research world. One of the things, again, I've realized that is so common in research is that when people find negative results different from what they expected, they always do not talk about that research. They go back and find techniques to make the research positive. And yet sometimes there's a lot to learn in why you have negative results. Anyway, now the devices are more efficient for your cause. So what devices? Yes, we have always to know, if I'm going to collect data, what are the proper devices? For instance, I might want to collect audio data. We know there are those devices that are used to collect data and then transcribe. But then the other question also could be that instead of using those independent devices, I could use a phone, a smartphone, just to do the recordings using what? A smartphone. And then maybe you might have an app that can easily help you process your data or the data you have collected, or this data might be pushed direct to your server and processed in real time. So I collect in the field, and the pipeline I have established takes my data directly, or uploads my data directly, and my data is automatically processed and then passed on to the relevant users. So you think about the devices. And how will you disseminate information? Of course, privacy concerns, consent concerns are always a challenge because you're using a mobile phone, and there are a lot of issues there in terms of who owns the phone, who has the password to the phone, who accesses the information. Sometimes you find you're building a solution for mothers, but all they know, or patients, but all they know is to use the phone to call, and it's a smartphone. And here you are putting a smart application. And you expect that they will be able to use the application to provide personal or private information. Forgetting that sometimes it is usually the children that are actually using the phones the more. So you anticipate that for you will be sending notifications through the application, hoping that it is the mother that is always the phone, always with the phone. So we have to think about all that. How do you disseminate the information, and who actually owns whatever device you're using to supply the information. Most devices, especially in families, you find they are shared. Anyway, there are a lot of things to think about. Is the technology available? This is a big question. Big question. From this question, you will realize that there is a lot of research in the world that has been done and published, but it has not been implemented. Primarily, why? One of the major challenges is because there is simply no technology to implement the solution. What does that even mean? Sometimes we do research from the future. Sometimes we do research from the future. For instance, I have myself built translators and translate through different languages. And by the time I built my first translator, I simply didn't have the resources to host my model and then start marketing it and then start looking for partners and then starting doing all that. But I've told the world that, hey, if you want to build a tool that translates from A to B from scratch, then you have to make sure that you have A, B, C, D. And here are the procedures. I tried it, and these are the results I got. These are the weaknesses. But if you can start from here, and you have the resources, then you should be able to implement it. And so, sometimes the technology is simply not there. Now we talk about large language models. Some of you are using them on your phones. Others are using them on your laptops. But then there are people who don't even know what these are. And yet there is a lot of information that is provided there, and there is a lot of knowledge that someone could earn by using such tools. Then the costing. So there are always costs involved, as you know, if you're to implement any sort of mobile health sort of system. There are buying devices, hosting charges, and so on and so forth. And now when it comes to building mobile apps that are powered by, or that are data-driven, then you have to invest a lot in, let's say, computers that you will use to build the models, because sometimes you have this large data set that can't just be processed by CPUs, but you need GPUs. Sometimes you want to utilize online tools, for example, Hugging Face or Kaggle. They provide also free servers to build models. So that means, of course, you need internet and the like. And sometimes you need to increase on the free resources, because Kaggle or Google Colab will provide you with free resources, but you might need to expand. And even when you're just building mobile apps, if you want to use Android Studio on your device, you need some good laptop, because Android Studio itself is heavy. So all these are resources that sometimes can attract some cost. Then adoption, there's a lot about technology adoption models, or TAM. So you can read about how you can support people to adopt. But most importantly, as you write or as you plan to do your research in any of these areas, this is a combination of health and technology. So if your background is IT or computer science, then make sure that you have a medical doctor on your team. And if your background is medical, make sure you have a tech person on your team. Do not aim to work alone where you say, you see, I am the king. I must show the world that I'm the first to do this. No, the world has already done those things. And in most cases, when we work with different people, we learn quite a lot. So please, I implore you to work with as so many people as possible. You will be amazed about what you can learn. Device ownership, I've talked about it. We could deliver solutions, and yet we only to find out that we expected a device to be owned by a lady, and yet it is owned by the husband. He bought it, he puts airtime there, and so he must see whatever comes. So, and vice versa. Then there are also business trends in healthcare. You must reach out because people have a tendency of marketing specific products and they try to kill some. For instance, I've seen this a lot in the tech world. They start marketing a product, they talk about it, and yet it can't deliver what is being said. So be careful, which you can call it propaganda, that is there, but I mean that's what brings trends. So everyone talks about ChatGPT, it can do wonders, it's going to replace human beings, teachers are going to be replaced. Then people are scared. And then when they get scared, everyone jumps on to learning what these tools do and how they work. Only to find that there are a lot of unknowns, that replacement is years away. Of course, except for small tasks. Those ones, machines have always done such tasks. You can think of your, you call them percorators. You're boiling water in a percolator. That is also AI. It used to be done by humans. They put water in a kettle, go light up charcoal stove, and then they boil and they wait until it's ready. Now it's automated. That is also a simple AI. But these are simple tasks that can be done by AI, but I don't think it means replacement. So I think it only means new opportunities are created, and hence you should learn new skills. That's what it means. Then, of course, mobile operating systems are a lot. So the question is, which one would you build for? And then language and culture, you have to think a lot about these two. Language defines usually who the people are, and hence it also defines how they behave and what they value. So as you build tools, then you have to think about how it will affect society and how it might enter into people's culture. And then, of course, monitoring and evaluation, those are pretty standard. You must provide ways in which you're going to monitor your tool. So as I move through this, give me a few minutes. I have to take care of something small. So, I apologize. I had to direct some colleague, so it took me some minutes. But otherwise, let's continue. So I'm sure you guys have looked at that slide. I mean, it talks about the different devices, and these are usually wearable devices that can be put on one's body. There are so many, and this is only like not even a quarter of what is existing. Okay, so you can have devices at any point of your body, any point. Okay, some are tattooed in skins. We know about contact lenses. One of my students yesterday was telling me that they can use them for cheating exams. And I'm wondering how, well, some are clipped onto clothing. They are wearable technologies that are built within clothes. Some, of course, in beds, monitor, so many. It's easier in some of those other developed countries. Why? Because of the temperature changes, they have all these technologies built to help moderate the temperature. So if you find something like a body warmer, since you're covered within and you're sleeping on it, so it's easier to pick some vitals from your health or your body as you sleep. And anything that you can wear, then it's also easy to pick some of those vitals. Of course, ophthalmology also has quite a lot. A lot of diagnostic tools have been built using phones. And now, unlike here where they were using an extra device to help converge the light, today we can actually take the photo almost directly. At least I know of some colleagues that are into ophthalmology, building AI for ophthalmology, and also building the first ophthalmology dataset for Africa. So that one is also there. So still, if you're interested in ophthalmology, you can be connected to the right people. I won't look at those, but here, as you build apps, you can build apps without programming, actually. You can just connect or use some of these tools, and then you just drag and drop, and then you're able to build your application. Even with AI, there are tools you can use, and you build AI solutions without actually doing a lot of coding. But here, I provide just a list of some tools that you can use. Again, I keep wondering, why would someone struggle to look for a research topic? I don't know why. All these tools can aid you in building a solution. And of course, as long as you have the idea, then you can't fail to build a solution. But then as we move into deeper, more customized operating systems, we know at least we've talked a lot about Android and iOS. They already talked about the rest. Let's see about this video. I think this one will also give you some more knowledge.
System that you'll see on Apple iPhones and Apple iPads. It's based on Unix, and it's a closed source software, which means you don't have access to the source code. You also only find Apple iOS on Apple products. If you're writing applications for Apple's iOS, then you need to develop it on the iOS Software Developers Kit, which is available exclusively on Mac OS X. These applications must be approved by Apple before they're released, and the applications are available to users exclusively from the Apple App Store. Google Android is the mobile operating system that is managed and maintained by the Open Handset Alliance. It's an open source operating system, which means you have access to all of the code, and it's based on the Linux operating system. You'll find Google Android running on many manufacturers' mobile devices. You can write applications for the Android operating system on Windows, on Mac OS X, and in the Linux operating system by using the Android Software Developers Kit. Developers can then make these applications available on Google Play or from third-party sites like the Amazon App Store. Windows Mobile is the operating system that you will see on the Windows Phone. This is a Microsoft operating system, and it is closed source. You do not have access to the source code for Windows Mobile. It's based on the Windows NT kernel. You'll find developers creating mobile applications and providing them on the Windows Store. This is a store that is curated exclusively by Microsoft, although there is side loading you can do so that you can load applications onto the phone from other sources other than the Windows Store. On our mobile devices, when we touch the screen, we want to be sure the operating system knows exactly where we're touching. On older devices, we had these resistive touch screens that required that you periodically calibrate the screen so that the system knows exactly where you're touching. But the capacitive touch screens that we use in today's devices don't require any type of ongoing calibration. Many of our mobile devices also include technology such as an accelerometer. This will detect when there's any type of motion to the device. It also helps with orientation because it knows which way happens to be up. Our latest generation of mobile devices might also include a gyroscope, so it's able to detect any type of motion in all three different axes. It's this combination of an accelerometer and a gyroscope that allows our applications to know exactly where our phone might be when we're moving it around. The Global Positioning System, or GPS, was created by the U.S. Department of Defense, and it consists of over 30 satellites that are orbiting the Earth. This allows us to get very precise navigation. As long as we can see 4 of these satellites, we're able to get some very precise coordinates of our longitude, our latitude, and the altitude where we happen to be. On our mobile devices, we use this GPS functionality for our maps and directions. It might also be able to combine GPS with other types of technologies, such as our Wi-Fi and our cellular towers, to really triangulate where we might be. With Wi-Fi calling, we can use our mobile devices to make calls over a Wi-Fi connection instead of using a traditional cellular phone company's frequencies. This uses voice over IP technology, and it's usually integrated into the phone's operating system. To be able to use this capability, it has to be a feature enabled by your carrier. Not every carrier is going to support Wi-Fi calling. This becomes very useful if you're outside of your calling area or you're in an area where there's a bad cellular signal. You can instead connect to a Wi-Fi network and make phone calls as normal. All of the latest mobile operating systems also include a virtual assistant, so you can talk to your phone and get a response. Maybe you'd like to set an appointment, turn on a timer, or find out a bit of information from the web by simply speaking to your phone instead of typing things into the keypad. In Apple's iOS, you can hold down the home button, or you can simply say, "Hey Siri," to get Siri's attention. And then complete your request. It's a similar process in Android. You hold down the home button, or you can say, "Okay, Google." And in Windows Mobile, you can hold down the search button, or you can start your request by saying, "Hey Cortana." Building applications in these mobile operating systems have many similarities across the different OSs, but there are some specific differences. Applications for iOS are written on the Mac OS X operating system, and you would need Apple's iOS Software Developers Kit called Xcode. You have a bit more flexibility with Android. You can create applications on Windows, Mac OS X, and Linux by using the Android Software Developers Kit or Android Studio. Once you create these applications, they are distributed in a standard format called the Android Application Package, or APK. And for Windows Mobile, you would write all of your applications on a Windows 8.1 or a Windows 10 desktop using Microsoft's Visual Studio. In the United States, our mobile devices are configured with a standard method of receiving wireless emergency alerts. These may be alerts that come directly from the President of the United States. They might be alerts that give us information about an imminent threat to the safety of life, or they may be Amber Alerts. These are similar to text messages that pop up on your screen, but there is an audible alert to identify it as a wireless emergency alert. There's also no cost to receive these alert messages. This is a very standard method of sending and receiving these alerts, so it works across every single one of these mobile operating systems. You may need the latest software to be able to receive these alerts, but once it's in your operating system, you'll receive them automatically. Our mobile devices are also becoming very standardized ways to pay for goods and services. We can use an SMS-based system, for example, to send an SMS message to send money or to receive money on our phone. We might also be using direct mobile billing, where we're purchasing a product, but we're billing it to our mobile account rather than to a checking account or a credit card account. I've used mobile web payments, or WAP, to be able to pay for taxi rides. I simply have an application where I put in the number of the taxi, and then it charges everything using the application. And one of the latest ways to purchase goods and services.
Okay, guys, are you still there? Yes, I can see you're logged in. Oh, Emma is there. Stella.
Yeah.
Okay. Is famous. Anton, I can see is also there. Okay. Okay. Wonderful.
Services is with NFC, or near field communication, where we just need to get our phone near the payment device and it's able to proceed with the credit card transaction.
Okay. I think basically what I wanted to show you is for you to have some idea about mobile OSs. But again, remember that actively today, Android and iOS are the most active operating systems. The history has been an interesting one. Previously, phones were just small and proprietary. These phones were basically just cell phones. You could only make calls. So at first, basically in those first generation, you would just make calls. Then later we moved into SMSs. And then later we started transferring or accessing internet. But then they had designed a specific browser which we called WAP, Wireless Application Protocol. And that browser would be installed on a phone, and then you would be able to access specifically designed websites for the mobile phone. And so there was a wireless markup, wireless hypertext markup language. For the web, we use HTML. That is for web browsers for computers. But then we needed a language that was lighter than HTML. So they built a wireless HTML language. That is the wireless markup language, yes, WML. And so then we would access internet through a browser designed for mobile, but only you would access a few features, light features. You wouldn't watch videos, or some text was reduced. Then we moved into Java. To me, that was the language, Java, to mobile equipment. So we started building apps, but again, these apps were limited because they would only be installed on a memory card, and then the phone would access the application through the memory card. And even then, there are tools we couldn't utilize. Again, there were limits in terms of audio and video and images. So basically, they were meant for text. And even other companies like Google had such apps. For some of you who remember, this is a time when you would find that when you load platforms like Gmail, there was one which was called a standard version. So it would only load when your network was slow. So the assumption was if your network was slow, then you're using a mobile phone. So this slow Gmail, or this version, the standard version of Gmail, had fewer or limited features in terms of graphics and in terms of information provided. So it was basically emails and those standard options, that is inbox, trash, and the like. But things like settings, changing color, and those other graphics, no, they were not there. But then as time moved on, the technologies started growing. You see, at first, to transfer information to mobile, we were using only GSM or Global Systems Mobile. It is some French word, GSM technology. So it was slow. Then later, when we moved to the second generation or 2G, now we moved into what we called Edge. Edge, I think it was enhanced data rates for GSM evolution, yes, because it was an improvement of GSM in terms of the speed and what could be accessed. Then from Edge, which was now 2G, we moved into 3G. And I think you remember MTN now talking a lot about 3G. And now we still use 3G. And of course, some places still use 2G, which is Edge. And then moved into LTE, which is now 4G. And then we are now into 5G. And some countries are already exploring 6G. But for us, we are here still struggling with 5G. 5G, I've seen in some places of Kampala, you can access it. But all in all these developments have been geared towards improving the speed at which information is transferred, that is uplink, downlink, or up to that download on mobile phones. And so with all these improvements in speed, now we were able to load browsers direct on mobile phones. So we no longer have warp technology on these advanced phones because we can load a full website directly on a mobile phone the same way it loads on a computer. So we have moved to that level. And that is kind of interesting. And then one other thing you will notice is that the phones, if you see the first Alcatel, I think this was the Alcatel Dynatec, this one that looks like sabuni or soap. Yeah. Oh, am I not? Oh, sorry. I thought, thank you. I'm actually sharing. Okay, I thought it was shared. So that's what I've been talking about. So I'm saying that as you see from the top there, so I've been explaining these developments throughout. As you see on the top there, the first phone, saying that's what we used to call like it looked like a bowl of soap. And of course, it had that big transceiver, that long antenna, for receiving signals. So it does both sending and receiving, a term usually called transceiving or transceiver. So then these phones were really big. Batteries, of course, were very big as well. And so does the charging points. And before we reached this size, we even had bigger ones that were at the size of a briefcase. You guys know briefcases. So the first phones were like that. Mobile phones were like that, like a briefcase. It was like a CPU. And I'm not talking about these Celeron CPUs that you have today. I'm talking about the previous CPUs of Pentium 3s. So it was weighing some, yes, paying to have one of those phones. Oh, of course, after this first one, the next phones were very good ones in terms of battery and no disturbances. But before even this big one, I'm saying we had those that looked like briefcases. And these were owned by only the rich. So basically, you had to be rich to own them. Why? Because you had to carry around 8 to 10 kgs of a mobile phone. So carrying it while walking wouldn't make sense. So that's why they were only for the rich. You had at least to put it somewhere in a car. And then whenever you make a call, you would first call the operator. You see now we have switching stations. Some of you, as you go to Kampala here, you know our switching station here. For MTN, there is a switching station at Makenke. Yeah? So things are now automated. Then we have another one that is in Mutundwe. That is in Kampala, Mutundwe there on the hill. It's one of the, it's actually, I think, the biggest switching or data center in Uganda. So today, like I was saying, things are automated. But then before, even these small ones, so if you had that big one that looks like a briefcase, you would first call the operator and tell them, hey, I want to talk to Otim. Even Otim would have a similar phone somewhere in another location. Then the operator would check and see are the channels free. The channels were limited, the channels of communication. So you find that there are only 6 available channels for everyone. So the operator checks, and then if there's a free channel, he would connect you to Otim's channel, and then he would speak. So that's how it used to be. But things have now moved all the way. And you see, we kept moving from big phones. Okay, this should be the Alcatel, second one here. And then you can see the Nokias. I'm happy to have seen all these phones. These are all Nokias, actually, most of them. There are also Siemens. I think this looked like a Siemens. But this was before smartphones came in. And you can see right here, this device was very small, okay, because the processing, they had found ways of processing the information. So the technology was growing hardware-wise, software-wise it wasn't. So you would find that you have a very small phones like the Siemens, but it can do a million things. Text, call, play music, send pictures, and what have you. Then people said, okay, but it's no longer fun. And then Steve Jobs introduced smartphones. Then when he introduced the smartphone, now phones had to do a lot more, because imagine with this screen on your smartphone, you have to play a video. And so you require a large battery. Guess what happens? The size of the screens grew again. The size of the phones grew again. Now, the smaller the phone nowadays, the less the processing power. So you limit yourself to not performing on some tasks. If you do that, then you're good to go. I also believe that these phones have very good batteries. If you avoid social media, you avoid YouTube, if you're using it only and only for calling, I tell you your battery can last for so long. But the moment you start texting, calling, 1 day, 2 days. So anyway, with the rise of such technologies, it also gave rise to what now we are calling smartphones. Running only from making calls, SMS, network, to other services, including now the camera, media players, GPSs, near field communication and NFS, accelerometer sensors, touch screen. I mean, so hardware grew crazy. And then for software, we can do quite a lot in terms of building databases or having database management systems, graphics, libraries, being able to access Google Maps, voice recognition, optical character recognition, all these came up. And again, you as someone who's thinking in terms of research, each of these that is presented, you can explore actually and build some solution or work on research that is only focused on any of these areas, whether it's Google Maps, you want to map out different hospitals, build a model that helps access services. Google Maps is your friend. Whether you want to go into voice recognition for different languages and analyzing the tones and then telling that according to this tone and the way a patient is speaking, they are not telling the truth. Their situation might be worse than what they are reporting. All that can be researched. And then, so that's how mobile phones evolved. And of course, before we had all this Android, we had proprietary development, and we are saying that by then a phone, all the softwares were put there by the company that manufactured the phone. We had nothing to do. But then with Android being open source, again, the way this was built was people first of all built it as just open source. There were no standards and what have you. But then Google and so many other companies came together and formed what we call the Open Handset Alliance. And then from there, they defined standards, and then they defined how to own this operating system and how to release updates. So that's how they came together. So Android is not just owned by Google, no, it's owned by a family of companies who call themselves the Open Handset Alliance. So then, what is Android? So you're saying it's open source operating system, and it has middleware, some key applications, and even libraries, which are, the standard hasn't changed over the years. This is what Android offers, and this is what it has. As you know, again, when you look at operating systems, even the Windows, okay, even the Windows you're using. So basically, you have different versions of your Windows operating system. I think at the time we had Windows XP, at least for those I used, Windows XP extra programs. They used to call it extra programs. That is from Windows 98, then Windows XP, then Windows Millennium, I think, then Windows 7, 8. Now I don't know which, there was even Vista. Now I don't know which version you're on. But in all, with all these versions, excuse me. With all these versions, what changes is not basically the user interface. If you check, you'll find that the user interface is actually the same. Sorry, you find that the user interface only is the one that changes. The graphics, the buttons, the design, the reactions, the feedback when you tap on a button, the arrangement. But then when you go to the command line interface, basically that one doesn't change. The commands are the same, they're standard. So actually, if someone knows how to use the terminal, they would care less actually about the changes in the different versions of operating system. And also the standard or the structure does not change. For instance, you have the operating system, and then the core is that's the kernel built in Linux. And then from the operating system, you have applications or different kinds of applications, from utility applications that usually, utility applications, to system applications, then to user applications, those that do some specific tasks for the users like Microsoft Office. That structure has not changed. So the same happens with Android. It still has the operating system. The core is also Linux. It has the middleware, the key applications that come with the phone, and API libraries to enable you interface with the different components of the phone. And these components also include that free open source OS development platform, where you create apps and devices that run the operating system. Let me check if some of these videos could it's one you could check it later. What amuses me is over the years, people are not producing new videos in this line anymore. So each time I check, we rarely have very new videos. So let me share this and just give you some basic.
This is the evolution of the Android operating system. In 2008, the HTC Dream hosted the first version Android 1.0. This inaugural edition included Google Maps, YouTube, an HTML browser, Gmail, instant messaging, text messaging, MMS, and more. It also paved the way for future generations of smartphones, introducing innovative features like the Android Market and App Store. Next came the version 1.1. Initially launched exclusively for the HTC Dream, which introduced new features such as business reviews on maps, saving attachments and messages, and a longer in-call screen timeout. In 2009, the Android 1.5, codenamed Cupcake, was released. It introduced the first on-screen keyboard, the ability to upload videos to YouTube, video recording, automatic screen rotation, support for widgets, copy and paste features in the web browser, and the ability to check phone usage history. Android Donut bought support for various screen sizes and resolutions, as well as compatibility with CDMA networks. Android 1.6 Donut also featured a quick search box, quick camera switching, the power control widget to manage Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, and GPS. The true transformation came with Android 2.0 Eclair, which introduced turn-by-turn GPS navigation, immediately boosting the utility of mobile devices. Eclair was the first version with text-to-speech support, multiple account support, live wallpapers, and a lock screen that allowed unlocking by swiping. The 2.1 Eclair update brought bug fixes and minor API changes. The 2.2 Froyo introduced new features such as Wi-Fi hotspot, push notifications via Android Cloud to device messaging, and the ability to lock the phone with a PIN. Android 2.3 Gingerbread featured an updated UI design support for extra large screen sizes and resolutions, NFC support, video calling, multi-touch support, and selfie camera support. Android 3.0 Honeycomb was launched exclusively for tablets and larger screens, with the most important feature being the elimination of the need for physical buttons. Virtual buttons for home, back, and menu were introduced. Android 4.0 Ice Cream Sandwich brought many of the features from Honeycomb, including unlocking the phone using the camera, the ability to monitor mobile and Wi-Fi data usage, screenshots, spell checking functionality, swipe gestures to dismiss notifications or browser tabs. Android 4.1 Jelly Bean was launched with Google Digital Assistant technology accessible from the home screen. It introduced expandable and interactive notifications, Google Now, greater widget flexibility, voice search and typing, lock home screen rotation support, and more. The release of Android 4.4 KitKat in 2013 marked the end of Android's dark era with lighter backgrounds and more natural highlights. This version was optimized to run on smartphones with just 512 MB of RAM and brought new features like screen recording, contact prioritization, and the OK Google feature, allowing access to Google without touching the phone. Android 5.0 Lollipop was a major overhaul in the overall looking of the operating system using Google's new material design language. Lollipop brought a modernized navigation bar, better notification on the lock screen that could be dismissed, the introduction of doze mode to close unused background apps, and support multiple SIM cards. Released in 2015, Android Marshmallow introduced Now on Tap, a potentially more popular feature. It also brought a new vertical scrolling app drawer, native biometric fingerprint unlocking support, USB-C support, Android Pay, memory manager, and the ability to separately adjust the volume of device, media, and alarms. Android 7.0 Nougat included many improved features like multitasking, particularly for larger screens. It introduced split-screen mode, quick app switching, the restart option added to the power button menu, battery usage alerts. Google Now was replaced by Google Assistant, and the notification system was improved as well. Android 8.0 Oreo brought visual changes to the settings menu, along with native support for picture-in-picture mode and the ability to enable, disable, or sort notification channels by importance. It also introduced password autofill and new emoji styling. Android 9.0 Pie brought many visual improvements, with the biggest change being the hybrid gesture button navigation system, replacing the traditional back, home, and overview buttons. It also brought battery life improvements, the shush feature that automatically activates the Do Not Disturb mode when the phone is placed face down, and adaptive battery, which hibernates apps that the OS determines the users won't use. With the release of Android 10, Google abandoned the dessert names, adopting a new logo and color scheme for Android. Android 10 included support for foldable phones, removed the pressable back button entirely, and introduced a system-wide dark mode. Android 11 brought significant changes regarding privacy, adding the option to grant apps permission for location, camera, and microphone on a one-time limited basis. It also introduced significant changes to notifications, allowing users to reply directly from notification, chat bubbles, native screen recording, and notification history. Android 12 introduced major updates, including a complete UI overhaul called Material U, allowing the interface to extract colors from the device's wallpaper to customize the user experience. Android 12 also came with more user-friendly widgets, enlarged quick setting tiles, and a simplified setting menu with larger text and smoother animations. Other updates included extended screenshots, improved notifications, in-app search, simplified Wi-Fi sharing, and a one-handed mode. In March 2022, Google released Android 12L, an update specifically focused on larger devices like tablets and foldable phones. The Android 13 largely maintained the same design as the previous version, but introduced new features such as expanded Material U customization options, a Now Playing widget, an improved QR scanner, native support for Bluetooth LE audio, support for digital car keys, and a new feature allowing users to set different languages for individual apps. Android 14 builds on Android 13's capabilities, introducing features that improve user comfort and customization. For example, it offers the ability to increase font size, new options for notification management, and better battery life. Personalization features have also been extended, including emoji wallpapers and customizable lock screens, as well as restrictions on access to photos and videos. Android 15 looks quite similar to previous Android versions, but there are some notable changes, such as partial screen sharing, satellite connectivity support, improved NFC experiences, new in-app camera controls. Android 15 also brings a universal toggle for keyboard vibration control, sensitive notifications that prevent OTPs from being read, changes for continuity features on foldables, and more. One of the major highlights of the Android 15 update is that it incorporates the latest version of Privacy Sandbox on Android, screen recording detection, and Android AI Core, a feature that allows apps to use AI directly on the device without needing the internet. Thus, from its humble beginnings in 2008 with Android 1.0 on the HTC Dream, Android OS has traveled an impressive path, evolving from a newcomer in the mobile tech world to a colossus dominating the operating system market. What do you think has been the most transformative Android version so far? Until next time, subscribe to our channels and stay connected.
Interesting, at least according to me. the versions have been very helpful. And so then Android has the different parts, and like we've talked already about. So from the hardware, where we refer to the different components of the hardware, and then the Linux kernel, the libraries that enable us to build for different tasks. Then the Android runtime that is during the process of compiling, and other core libraries. And then the application framework, where you have the Windows manager, the location, content providers, telephone, and sensors. And then also you have the user interface framework. And we already heard about material design from the video. And then you also have the pre-installed applications, like I said before, that are installed by the vendor, plus the SDK tools or software development kit to enable you build tools. There are many native Android applications according to your phone. You know, when you buy your phone, those applications that come with it are native applications. But always there are also those for Google. That's from Android Marketplace, Google Maps, Gmail client, Google Talk, and so on. And for the SDK, if you want to build for Android, you don't need any license. It provides you with access to Wi-Fi, GSM, all those technologies. And actually, you can even write applications to check which network you're connected on and the speed of the network. Today, we have all those methods exposed. Then there are a lot of APIs you can use for for GPS, network-based, and there are a lot of sensors. Like I said, your phone has all these sensors available for you to use basically in medical health. You can still use them to provide you with information, and then you're able to use the information to guide the healthcare sector. Message passing, interprocess communication, definitely. You can send messages from one app to another or from one activity to another. I am not talking about chatting, I'm talking about messages. So apps can also communicate to each other. Multimedia support, definitely. You can utilize your camera for both photos and audio. Sorry, for both photos and video, and then a microphone for audio. So there is a media library where most of the photos and audio are stored. So there is a database local to your phone. So the SDK provides a way in which you can access those apps that come pre-installed on your phone. Then you have the application framework, which also allows for reuse, as well as background applications or processes. Usually these ones monitor services on your phone. So most times when you're working with your phone, and let's say you have a call, you always get that interruption to inform you about the call. Or if you set an alarm on your phone, you always have background services running and waiting to trigger the alarm when the time reaches. Then there is a WebKit. This is basically also giving you access to actually load websites directly within your application. This is very interesting because from loading the website within your application, you can actually go ahead to utilize now things like natural language processing or data science to do some analysis on the text by using things like web crawling. And then once you have the information, you can process it and provide feedback back to the user. Background applications, we talked about that. Then mobile optimized hardware, accelerated graphics, and OpenGL, ES, and the like. These are to do with computer vision or graphics processing. Then for the API features, okay. So we are going to break off for lunch. Then we'll convene back at 2 and then continue with this lecture. I hope that you guys will be here by 2 such that we proceed. that okay? Conflicting class? Hmm. 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 Yes, he's offline. And I'm not aware of that because according to the timetable, we are supposed to be starting today, and that's a whole day, and tomorrow, and the coming weekends. But I'll wait. If I get communication about it, then we can explore it. Okay. Okay. I'll be waiting. All right. See you guys at 2.